So throughout the last several weeks, I've been spending a lot of time flying the DJI Phantom 4 Pro version 2, and I've been having a lot of fun with some key takeaways. And in this video, I'm going to tell you why I will still recommend the Phantom 4 V2 in 2023 and why you should buy one if you find one at an incredible deal. Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Eddie and I am a drone content creator here in New York City. And let's take a deep dive right into the Phantom 4 and answer the main question. Without making this video too long, should you buy the Phantom 4 Pro V2 in 2023? And the short answer is yes, I absolutely will. And I'm gonna tell you some of my initial impressions so far in 2023. I don't really wanna call them initial impressions because I've owned this drone now for slightly over 2 years, and it's a drone that I've considered selling multiple times because I want to definitely clear out some space, but I won't. And if I had to buy one in 2023, I absolutely would. So the last 6 weeks, I've been strictly flying the Phantom 4 V2 for some aerial photography work and also for some aerial, videography. And let me explain to you some of the key takeaways that I've actually discovered while flying this drone the last 6 weeks. So I'm looking at some of my notes here that I took down while in the field. This drone has some incredible features. First, 4K camera at 60 frames per second, but not just any ordinary 4K camera at 60 frames per second. This thing has a mechanical camera with a mechanical shutter, which is a huge game changer and a huge difference in just capturing your video and your photos without distortion. This thing is a beast in sports mode. I mean, like if you wanna like really chase something, or you really want to take this drone somewhere, you want to get to your destination fast, put this thing in sports mode and it is absolutely gonna get there as fast as it can. I mean, this thing achieves insane speeds, especially when you have tailwind at your favor. And then I think one of the biggest selling points for me is hand catching. I mean, this baby is so easy to hand catch because of these legs that's attached to the body of this drone, but to hand catch and hand launch is so easy with this drone. And there's some reasons why you will want sort of this design of a drone, which I'll get to in a little bit. Now, with that being said, there are some cons, right? I mean, not everything is great, and this is old technology. The Phantom 4 is quite old, and actually just recently, over the last few months, DJI decided to stop manufacturing these. So if you go on DJI's website, you can no longer buy these new. I think that occurred right when the Mavic 3 Enterprise drones came out, because those Mavic 3 Enterprise now sport a mechanical shutter. So no need for the Phantom 4 to be like that workhorse because of the mechanical shutter for mapping and etc. and all those enterprise jobs. But with that being said, let's talk about some of the cons of this right off the bat. And number one is the size, right? This drone is pretty big. It is cumbersome to really carry and travel with. It comes with a really cool refrigerator looking like container, but even with that container, it is just a difficult drone. It's not compact and not portable by any means. It doesn't fold. That's the other opportunity. It does not fold. I mean, this is as small as it gets. I don't have the propellers installed now. If you install the propellers, then obviously the drone is a little larger and you need some more space because the propellers extend out from the frame of the body. But there's no way that you can make this little guy here or this big guy here any smaller. It is, this is the form factor. Another, con is that the Phantom 4 does suffer from gimbal issues because the gimbal is just so exposed here on the body of the drone. There is notorious gimbal issues where the ribbon gets messed up, or while packaging the drone away in your refrigerator box is what I call it, you may damage the gimbal. And I actually have gotten my Phantom 4 replaced by DJI now twice because the gimbal has had drifting issues that I perhaps maybe caused by not, taking care of the gimbal as I'm storing it or traveling from destination to destination. So that is a gimbal, that is a known issue. The last con that I'll share with you right from the beginning is that this drone is not the smoothest. It is very powerful, and with that being said, it is very, very jerky. I mean, the maneuvers are extremely jerky at stock settings. So when you do acquire this drone, you definitely have to spend the time to go into your settings and dial them in. You have to adjust the gimbal settings. You have to adjust the overall tuning of this drone to kind of like tame it and make it more cinematic, because otherwise right out the box, this drone is not the most cinematic you can possibly get. It is a very, very rough drone to fly just because of its overall power and thrust, including the gimbal. In lieu of transparency, I just want to be upfront and honest and let you know that this video did not take me 15 minutes. As you can see, it is almost a 30-minute video with a lot of information around the Phantom 4 Pro V2. However, what I have done is included some chapters in the description for your convenience. Feel free to scroll through to the content that you find most useful, and I appreciate you in advance. So I opened up this video by asking, would I buy the Phantom 4 V2 in 2023? And is this a drone that I would actually recommend for someone to buy? And the short answer was yes. But before we continue on some additional learnings that I've had over the last several weeks as I dedicate my time solely to this drone, so let's take a quick deep dive on some of the specs of this drone just as a refresher, because although this drone is quite a few years old, it does pack a lot of features for what it offers, especially in 2023. Let's first start with some very high-level overview of the Phantom 4. And for starters, let's deep dive right into the camera. So the camera features a 1-inch CMOS sensor that can shoot 4K 60 and up to 20 megapixel photos. It has OcuSync 2.0 HD transmission system. It has 5 directions of obstacle avoidance. It has a dedicated remote controller with a built-in screen with even greater precision because of the built-in screen, or just a standard RC depending on which bundle you purchase. And then it has also a wide array of intelligent features, things that we're familiar with, such as active track, trace, waypoints, etc. Now, taking a closer look at the camera, the onboard camera, as I mentioned, is a 1-inch 20 megapixel CMOS sensor with a mechanical shutter. And the mechanical shutter is extremely important when you want to eliminate some of that rolling shutter. If you're looking for the best cinematic footage without any distortion, you really want a camera that has a mechanical shutter. And from the DJI lineup at this point, there are not many out there. When you think about the Air 2S, the Air, and the mini drones, none of those drones have a mechanical shutter. So the fact that the Phantom 4 did arrive years ago with a mechanical shutter is very impressive, and it is one of the main reasons why this drone is still a relevant drone in 2023. It also has an advanced sensor as part of the camera with some impressive processing with some amazing true to life colors. And you can definitely leverage this camera in D-Log or D-Cine-like and really grade to your liking to match to your maybe perhaps on the ground camera, such as maybe a Canon mirrorless or a Canon SLR or perhaps Sony. Any camera, you name it, you can shoot in log here and really do your best to grade and match to those cameras. The Phantom 4 V2 has an optimized camera with an aperture of 2.8, so it's a wide angle lens. And the camera again allows to record at 4K up to 100 megabits per second, which is amazing. And you also have some high resolution slow motion modes. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, you can record in D-Log and in H.265 codec, again, to get the maximum of that high dynamic range and optimize your image quality. The precise mechanical shutter is the butter on this drone. When you think about the camera, the mechanical shutter, as I mentioned earlier, eliminates distortion, which can occur when you're capturing high paced or high speed, fast moving objects or subjects, and then you're also flying. One downside though of the electronic shutter is that when you switch over to burst, you're no longer in mechanical. That's why I said electronic shutter. And then you get a max capability there of 14 frames per second at 20 megapixels to capture those moments. Now, when thinking about flight performance, switching between modes is fantastic with the Phantom 4. So right off the bat on the remote here, you have 3 switches that you can switch to. You of course have position mode, which is your ordinary GPS mode. You have sports when you really need that fast speed of the drone and capability. And then in this drone itself, you have ADI mode. So that's one thing that many actually do miss and wish that we have in other pro grade drones such as the Mavic 3. ADI mode is a great feature to have when you're really trying to achieve those cinematic shots and you want some natural movement and you don't want the GPS position hold really fighting you and bringing you to a complete stop as fast as possible. ADI mode allows the drone to drift and sort of have some fluid flights as you are maneuvering in that mode. The maximum speed of this drone without any advantage of wind is 45 miles per hour. And as I mentioned earlier, you do have intelligent flight modes here. So you have quite a few intelligent flight modes. You have active track, which can recognize and automatically follow people and objects like cars and boats. Obviously, you have return to home. That is an intelligent flight feature. So it calculates an optimal route according to the environment and bypasses obstacles along the way because of its obstacle avoidance sensors. You have tap to fly, which is plotting a course by tapping on the screen and granting more than enough time to concentrate on getting the perfect shot, because then you can really control the gimbal as the drone is navigating to those destinations that you mark. You have draw mode, so you can draw a flight path in real time on the camera screen and the aircraft will complete a route, making aerial cinematography such a better experience. And then lastly, you have gestures, and gestures is one thing that I used. I remember when I first bought my Mavic Pro 1, the first initial Mavic Pro, and what gestures does is you raise one hand while facing the drone will automatically center you within the frame, and then you raise your second hand and it will start a selfie timer and take a photo of you or your group. And the reason of this is so that you don't have a remote on hand and the remote is not in the shot. Now, in terms of safety, this drone has redundant IMUs and compass monitors to also analyze critical data and possible errors, so dramatically increasing the safety of this aircraft flying in the air. And then you have the obstacle avoidance sensors, which again will help you while flying in the air. Transmission is something that's also extremely important, and in today's world we have OcuSync 3, even OcuSync 3 Plus, depending on what devices you may own. The Phantom 4 Professional V2 has OcuSync 2.0 video transmission systems, which allows you to send and receive video simultaneously at 1080p for up to 10 kilometers. OcuSync 2.0, as a reminder, supports 2.4 and 5.8 gigahertz, and it scans for, it automatically scans for the best frequency as soon as you power on the drone in the best channel to maintain that perfect clear transmission. Thanks to OcuSync 2.0 as well, it also allows you to use those DJI goggles, not the goggles that we're thinking about for FPV drones, but that big racing goggle that DJI at one point made. You can fly the Phantom 4 with those goggles as an added bonus or benefit. I personally have never tried that, but did just want to mention that that is available. Now, setting the drone aside for a quick second, let's talk about the remote. So like I mentioned earlier, the Phantom 4 comes with 2 available remote options. You have a standard RC, and then you have the RC with the screen attached. Let's go ahead and turn it on just so we can preview it here as I'm speaking. So this screen, it is an ultra bright 1000 nit screen. It is a 5.5 inch LCD display. So this is great for direct sunlight. It actually folds where you can put it away when you put your drone away, and then you lift up and you adjust as needed depending on what angle you want to see the screen at. The drone itself, it is quite heavy, but you do have some additional ports here in the back. So this essentially is a smart controller from the times of the past before the smart controller. You have a USB port here, you have HDMI, you have a micro SD card slot, and then you also have an additional micro USB adapter, and then you have your typical dials on the top, and then you have these 2 funky antennas here, which I don't miss on the other remotes that now have internal antennas. This remote can give you up to 5 hours of battery life, and it does come with obviously DJI 4. The DJI Go 4 app is built in, and I'll talk about some of my experiences with this remote a little bit later when we get to our final overall recap. So although the Phantom 4 V2 is no longer available from DJI, they still have it listed on their website, just out of stock, and you can still check out the original retail price. And I did that today while preparing for this video. And currently DJI, again, although not available, lists the Phantom 4 V2 with the standard RC without a screen for $1,599, and the Phantom 4 V2 with the RC with the attached screen, like the one I demonstrated a little bit earlier, retails for $2,049. All right, so my initial goal, as I mentioned, was not to make this video a very long video and to keep it under perhaps 10 minutes, 15 minutes at the maximum. So let's recap my thoughts overall about the Phantom 4 in 2023. So while flying it the last few weeks, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, you know, there are some pros and cons. So let's jump right into the pros over the last few weeks as I've been flying and dedicating my time to the Phantom 4. So this thing is a beast. The power and stability and the comfortability of flying this drone in strong winds is world class, is second to none. I mean, this drone really maintains a great position in the air in high winds. I was in Far Rockaway on a very windy day. I was in Long Island City on another very windy day. I visited Roosevelt Island, all areas and destinations over bodies of water where you launch a Mavic, whether it's a Mavic 3, whether it's a Mavic Mini. Yes, it's gonna fly, but you're gonna see that this drone is struggling and perhaps even tilted in some parts as you fly. The Phantom 4, although it may also be tilted, it is rock steady where it doesn't lose position. I mean, that is very impressive, and one of the reasons why I always gravitate to this drone when I'm looking for certain shots. The second reason why I truly love and would recommend this drone is the camera. There's something to be said about this camera and the way that it captures some very crystal clear, fluid videos and photos. I love the natural color scheme that it has. I love the way the overall details and sharpness is not too sharp. It's not, you know, under saturated. It is just like right at the money spot. I think something about the Phantom cameras and the way perhaps it was calibrated by DJI initially from the factory, it is fantastic, and it's one of my actually go-to drones when I really want to just focus on photos. This is the drone that I go for. Battery life is very impressive for a drone this old. I am averaging about 30 to 35 minutes each battery. I currently own 4 batteries, and I usually charge all 4 when I go out to fly, and I always come back with either 2 or 1 battery fully charged because I just don't go through all those batteries. It is quite impressive that, you know, again, a drone this old can still maintain such a great battery. There is no swelling in this battery, unlike the Mavic 2 Pro. I actually love the design of this battery and how the battery inserts itself in the drone. I'm actually really happy that the Mavic 3 adopted this style, but the battery on this drone actually goes inserted into the Phantom 4, and I think that this is a great design, especially when you think about safety and all the risk that the Mavic 2 Pro had because of the battery design and the battery swelling and popping out of the drone. So I've been flying this drone with my smart controller, not this smart controller here or this Phantom 4 controller with the RC screen. I am talking about the actual you know, smart controller that was released by DJI, the first initial one. I actually installed an antenna modification to that smart controller, and I paired it because it's OcuSync 2 and this drone is OcuSync 2. I paired those two together, and I think it's a winning combination. We're gonna talk about in a bit as one of the cons of this controller, but just if you have a smart controller, just understand that you can bind it to this drone, and even if you want to do some antenna modifications, you will actually benefit tremendously by the increase of signal strength and penetration. And something I mentioned very early on in this video, my last and final pro that I want to mention, is your ability to hand catch this drone. This drone, I think, I truly love the design just because of this one component here, and is that you can hand catch and hand launch just by holding it here at the bottom. You think about, you know, difficult scenarios. Perhaps you're on a boat in an environment such as maybe like the beach, as I mentioned. You don't want to launch this drone obviously in the sand because it's just going to kick up all the sand. You can easily launch and hand catch just by holding it here on the side without any issues. In fact, I feel more confident hand catching and hand launching the Phantom 4 than I do any of my other drones. So now let's get to the cons, right? Number one is the size. It's not portable, it's not compact at all. It is a pain in the butt to travel with. I ride a Super 73 when the weather is nice to, you know, local destinations when I'm just flying for leisure. And this is one drone that I can't bring with me while riding my Super 73 e-bike. The setup time could be quite cumbersome. I mean, you know, you do have a gimbal clamp that you have to remove. You do have to install 4 different propellers, and obviously you have to install the battery. So that's another feature that I think is a con. It's not as easy to set up and start getting to fly. Now switching over to the RC. This RC, when I initially bought the Phantom, I thought I would love this RC because I'm such a huge fan of smart controllers. I own the smart controllers for all 3 drones. So the Mavic 2 has a smart controller. The Mavic 3, I have the RC Pro, and the Mini, I have the new RC N1, I think it's called. So when I saw the Phantom 4, I opted for this controller back then because I wanted, you know, something as close to a smart controller as possible. Now, the issue with this controller is, number one, it is very laggy. I think this has a very old Android chipset inside. With that being said, you know, you can definitely experience a lot of glitching where the Go4 app actually will freeze while you're mid-flight as you're changing settings. Is actually very annoying. The reception back to this remote I find is not the best. I get impressive transmission and video feedback to my smart controller, my V1 smart controller, but on this remote here I find that the video sometimes lags, and also it is not as clear and as sharp as I expect it to be. This RC is also very heavy, and at times it gets really hot. It actually has a built-in fan and it kicks in quite often. Lastly, I think there's something wrong with these sticks, and I've calibrated multiple times. Again, this is new right out the box. But I find that I get very jerky maneuvers with this RC even after calibrating my gimbal and just the overall tuning of this drone. And when I switched over to the smart controller, V1, I saw dramatically a huge improvement right away. So night and day difference flying the Phantom 4 from a cinematic approach using this controller and using a standard smart controller such as the smart controller V1. And lastly, the biggest con of them all and why I think DJI no longer manufactures this drone is because when you're flying in a high velocity, a high angular pitch, and even when you are, especially when you are flying against wind, this drone loves to tilt forward. With the drone tilting forward, the camera is keeping its position straight and you get props in your shot. And I know many of us absolutely hate, especially GPS camera drone pilots hate seeing props in the shot. And the Phantom 4, I think all of the Phantoms, but the Phantom 4 V2 is notorious for absolutely showing you the propellers when you're keeping the angle at 0 degrees on your camera and you are going against wind or you are going at high speeds overall. So final conclusions to end this video short, and I hope that I held to my commitment of under 10 to 15 minutes. I opened this video by saying, would I buy this drone in 2023? And I, started the video saying yes, and I will end the video saying yes, I absolutely would. And I would in 2023 under some circumstances. Number one, if I were to find this drone on average in great or excellent condition on around $1,000 with multiple batteries, I think that's a great deal. Just make sure that you also check the gimbal and there is no gimbal movement and no gimbal shakes or vibrations. And I would absolutely recommend you buy this drone with the stock RC and not this RC with the screen. I mean, if you're getting it for $1,000 with this screen, go for it overall, but don't let this be a deal breaker if you're out in the market shopping for a Phantom 4. I think actually you should pick up a smart controller V1 and you'll have a much better experience with that versus this, or just use the standard RC. So why do I choose to continue to use this drone in 2023 and why I have spent the last few weeks flying the Phantom 4? Well, it's a great drone to hand catch and hand launch. The camera is really impressive during the day. It just has some very fluid and precision movement. The mechanical shutter does an amazing job as well, especially when you're chasing boats or, high speed objects. There's a professional look to this drone. If you show up at a job site and you have perhaps an Air 2S or Mini or Mavic 3, not to knock any of those drones, but perception sometimes is the reality. This has a professional, business look, and most people that are hiring drone pilots are not familiar with how old a Phantom 4 is, and they can care less. It's just the overall perception. Stability in the wind is also why, during days where there's high winds, I always grab the Phantom 4 versus the Mavic 3, just because I know that this drone will actually perform in high winds and will be rock steady, as I mentioned, and the obstacle avoidance is great. Now, some frustrating parts over the last few weeks. Setting up the drone, as I mentioned, has been cumbersome. Carrying it around, extremely cumbersome. It's not portable at all. The propellers get stuck in cold climates. It won't release from the actual motors. You actually have to bring it inside, or in my case, I usually bring it to the car a lot, wait for it to warm up so I can release the propellers and pack it all away. The fact that the drone is white when you are in the air sometimes is not easy to maintain visual line of sight on this Phantom. You can't go as far because it just blends in with the sky too easily, especially on a cloudy day. And then lastly, there's no hyperlapse feature on the Phantom 4, and I'm just not sure why hyperlapses was never included, because I think that this drone actually will be incredibly amazing if it did have hyperlapse, just because of the capability of the camera and also the mechanical shutter. All right, so there you have it. These are the reasons why I continue to keep the Phantom 4 in 2023, why I still fly the Phantom in 2023, and why I would strongly still in today buy this drone if I found it at a great deal. And I certainly recommend you pick up this drone if you do find it at an amazing price. And I am quoting an amazing price at that $1,000 mark. So guys, that's it for today. If you have any questions, you have any comments or feedback, feel free to drop them down in the comments below. I will be in there answering all of your questions and responding to all your comments. Of course, I appreciate the engagement. Please stay safe out there, continue flying, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.
Hit the ground and it go off, yeah. I can't take no loss, yeah. I don't even know what it costs, yeah. I hit the ground and it go off, yeah. Hit the ground and it go off, yeah, yeah. Run it, ooh. I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, yeah, yeah. I really feel it's my time, think it's my year, yeah, yeah. I really feel it's my time.